for joining us. I think just due to the attendance, we've got quite a few people on the phone today. That's certainly a sign that things are picking up out there, which is always great to see. So just a few things about our firm and Sage Software, and then we're going to jump right into the workflow. We're always excited to see clients on these webinars, and I noticed that we've got a few on. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail than I normally do, just so that the clients on the line too might be able to pull a few things out of this as well. My phone number is here at the bottom. If anyone has any questions following the event, we encourage you to either call myself or Cameron Clark, who's also on the phone. You can just call our 800 number and ask for either one of us, and we'll be happy to help. So just a couple of things about Alliance Solutions Group. We're technically a consulting firm that's focused mainly on the construction and real estate market. We do service a number of different products, and if you come back and check out our events page on our website, you'll see that we have other webinars coming up on some of these other solutions that we work with. We're spread throughout California, Texas, Florida, and even have clients in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. We have about a client base of around 5,000 active clients, and I think one of the strong things about our firm is that really anyone you talk to within Alliance Solutions Group typically is going to have industry knowledge and experience. I myself came from the industry before going down this path, and I think that is also the case with a lot of the people that you'll speak to at our firm. A couple of things about Sage Software. They're a publicly traded company. They're one of the top 3 developers out there. Of course, everyone is familiar with Microsoft and possibly Intuit. And the third is Sage. So they've got a very large client base, a very big commitment to the construction market, and they're typically recognized by a lot of the trade partners out there. Big one is CFMA, that's the Construction Financial Management Association. So there's a lot of recognition out there by our peers, and Sage is always one of the top construction packages out there. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is a few pieces of this, what we call the profit cycle. Sage 100 is a fully integrated system, and really the benefit of that product is that it does try to focus all of its efforts on the complete life cycle of a project. And so what we're going to be talking about today mainly is once we've acquired our clients and now we've got a project to run, how do those activities essentially, happen, and then where is that data being shared with in terms of accounting and ultimately reporting. So we're going to really be focusing on this little block here today, but also talk a little bit about these other 2 over here as well. So let's jump into the actual software itself, and we'll kind of go through the workflow. So right now I'm actually logged in Sage 100. Just a couple of fundamentals for people on the phone who aren't familiar with the software. It's a fully integrated system, like I mentioned, so although we're going to be mainly focusing on project management today, we are able to accomplish the other disciplines of your business in this system as well. In addition to that, one of the big questions or concerns that comes up when you're talking to someone about a fully integrated system is security. And we do have security in place in this software, and we can control who can go where in the software. So that also is in place. A couple of other things. In terms of navigation, Sage did lay this out in a very easy-to-use format. You've got a couple of different ways to navigate through this software, and the obvious one here is your menu options. I can just simply expand the area that I want to work in and just simply double-click on that particular area, and it will open up that screen or report for me to work in. And that's kind of like a menu-driven navigation. The second way is what we call process maps, and these process maps are these tabs up here at the top, and I can go ahead and just simply click on one of these process maps, And again, it's going to create some shortcuts to the different areas of the product. When I double click on that, it will open up that particular area of the software. Now what's interesting about these process maps is you can modify them. I can click right here to go ahead and change the layout. So say, since we're talking about project management, say for example I wanted to add progress billings into this process map. I can just use drag and drop technology and simply drag that icon right out into my process map for my company, and even change the label on it if I would like to. And again, you know, I can draw dependencies and change the order and do all those types of things. And that's as it relates to the company as a whole. Now, a lot of times you'll have people who really are only going to work with a certain portion of the software. And again, since we're talking about project management today, we'll focus on project managers. So in that case, we have what's called the My Menu. You see, because I'm not really concerned about these other areas of the product where I likely can't access. So what the My Menu does for me individually as an end user, it gives me the opportunity to click on that and just basically turn off the features in the software that I have no interest or maybe no access to using. And so this gives me a more clean and focused access to the particular parts of the product that I'm going to use. The other thing is, when we talk about reporting, a couple of things that are really going to be kind of leveraged across the whole software package. First off, when we look at reports, and I'll just pull one up for us, the bulk of the reports in the software, including forms, forms meaning like say a purchase order or a change order, something like that. Of course, you can print them to screen, and a high percentage of our reports actually have drill down. And what I mean by that is I can simply double click and access more information about that said report and go all the way down into the source transaction. In other words, the transaction that really made up that information. And if we take advantage of our attachments functionality, I could, in this case here, I've drilled into an AP invoice. I could actually pull up a copy of that scanned invoice. And once I've done my research, go back to where I started. So, you know, that's when we really kind of view our reports being more interactive than, say, a drill down. The other thing that we can do with our information that we output is simply drop that information into Excel. We've got a couple of Microsoft integration points, and one of them is Excel. And I can drop this information that we were just looking at into a spreadsheet. Really comes in handy when you're trying to maybe do like a change order log or something like that. I might want to take it with me to a job site. So for that reason, I might drop it into a spreadsheet. That little integration with Microsoft comes in handy in those cases. And likewise, when we need to create some outbound communication, we also tie in with Outlook email. And so what I mean by that specifically is if I need to get something out of the system and over to someone, I can just click this Outlook button. And what's going to happen is it's going to basically convert that information I was just looking at, that report, into a PDF for me and attach it to an Outlook email. Now, that to me is very compelling because, you know, for those of you on the phone who are doing your project management manually, and you look at something like a change order, the fact that you can generate that change order and click this Outlook button here, which will convert it to a PDF for you and attach it to an email, is going to save you a number of steps. You know, think about it. If I'm doing a change order manually, I'm likely doing that form in Word, which means that's a lengthy process. Then I've got to update my log in Excel. And then if I need to distribute that, I've got to convert that Word document to a PDF, save it somewhere, then open up my Outlook, then attach it, and then send it. So we're really saving a lot of steps, really with just this individual feature here. And so I always show these first because they are system-wide. You'll see those little icons as I pull up other reports in the through the demo. Okay, so those are just a couple of high-level things. One last thing I want to mention is we do attachments, and in the world of project management, attachments, of course, are so important. And what I specifically mean by that is any type of record that you'll see in the demo this morning, be it a change order or a subcontract or a purchase order, and we have them in the accounting area too. You're going to see this little paperclip up here. And basically what that is referring to, and I'm just going to pull one up here for us. What that is referring to is the capability to say, okay, I've got a record here, this case change order number 1 for this customer, and there might be some supporting information related to this. It could be an email, it could be a picture, it could be a PDF or even a spreadsheet, but or a combination of those things. And what we're able to do is either drag and drop or navigate to that supporting information and basically attach those things to this record for future reference. And if we drag and drop an email from Outlook into this record, you'll notice that it actually comes with the actual attachment. And that email is stored in the database. So essentially it could have been deleted from your Outlook. And so that's great because whether it's an inbound or an outbound email, you may feel it necessary to keep a copy of that on this record, and you can go ahead and do that if you like. Also, as I mentioned earlier, when you drill down into reports, you can access those things. So very useful. Okay, let's jump into workflow. And as I do that, definitely encourage people to, we've got, due to the volume of people on the phone, we've got everyone's phones muted. But there is a questions box in the lower right-hand side of your toolbar on the GoToWebinar. And so as I go through this, if anyone on the phone has a question, I certainly encourage you to type it in. And as I see those pop up, I'll do my best to get those answered. And so I want this to be interactive. So we'll get started. So we've been awarded a job. And so if you're using our estimating, the good news is you have the opportunity to drive some information from estimating into the project management area of the software so that you don't have to re-enter it. But we do have clients who choose to use other estimating solutions. And so once we've been awarded a job, regardless of where and how the data is coming, it's going to start with a budget. And so when we talk about budgets, what's nice about this, it's a single point of entry. So when I build my budget, I'm only going to have to do it a single time. It's going to be available to accounting right away. And likewise with that job that I create in order to build the budget. So of course the first step I need to do is create this job, and you can track various things on this, including retainage if your customer is going to hold retainage on you. We do properly manage retainage. We'll talk about that on another webinar. And in addition to that, for you residential contractors on the phone, we've got some special fields over here that were laid out for you guys. So the lot number and the square foot, we actually produce a report out of the system that will give you your average square foot cost per cost code. We're able to do that because you indicate on the job screen the square footage of the home. Anyway, we get the fundamentals of the job created, and now we create this budget. Now there's a couple of fundamental things here. First off, you guys, each of you on the phone, will be able to define your own budget classifications, your cost codes, and you can organize those cost codes into divisions. So basically, how you lay this out is really how your job cost reporting is going to be presented to you. A couple of interesting things here from a cost control perspective. So when I come in and I create this budget, this is pretty straightforward. We just organize it by cost code and cost type. But more importantly, from a cost control perspective, what we can do is once we all agree that, hey, you know what, this is the budget that we're going to live with, what we can actually do is we can choose to set the budget. So by setting this budget, which is this button down here, we're going to now move these numbers from what we call the actual budget over to the original area. So, you know, when I click this, you'll see it quickly goes right over here. There we go. And then I've got my original laid out and my actual. Now what I can do is I can make it so that the only way this budget can be changed moving forward is through change orders, and we do that by locking it down. Now that's a security-enabled field, so I can actually control who can uncheck and who can check that. And some clients choose to have this defaulted as checked, and so therefore once this is saved, it can't be changed unless you have the rights to do that. So anyways, it's one thing to create a budget and make that available to accounting. It's a whole other thing to be able to lock it down and have some accountability here. And ultimately, we're doing this because what we want to do is be able to get reporting like this here, which we call a job summary report. And you know, this type of reporting organized by cost code and by division, this is available to you mainly because you're loading the job with a budget. So once we got that budget generated and locked and we're comfortable with that, now we need to buy out the job. And so we basically go to two different places for that. For those of you on the phone who buy your materials for a job and prefer to use POs, we do have an area in the system where that can take place. It's right here. And just a couple of things here that you know, I think are relevant to contractors. I mean, because at the end of the day, you know, a PO, we're going to put the vendor and the job. You guys would probably expect that to happen. And of course, we're going to print a professional-looking PO out of the system. You can modify this to add legal language to it if you want to, or put a logo on it. That's up to you all. But the main things here that kind of differentiate this is again, some of the cost controls that we can choose to leverage if we want. First off, again, depending on the organization, we might have someone really in charge of purchasing and other people who might need to review this but not touch it. And again, that's where that lock edit button comes in. So we can again choose who is going to have access to maybe not only look at these but maybe modify them. That's where that comes into play. The other thing is you know, as the life of the project goes on, you might encounter the need to issue additional POs. Now this is where a really nice integration with accounting comes into play. Because when you're issuing these POs, these are essentially committed costs. And so what we don't want to do is accidentally exceed our budget in the event of issuing a PO as the life cycle of the job goes on. So up here in the options area of the system, we have something we can choose to turn on, and that is our set PO over budget warnings. So what that is actually looking at is the cost code that we assign this PO right here, and it's going to tie that back to the budget. Again, because we integrate back with the accounting. And there's different types of tolerances you can do, whether it's a warning or a not to proceed, not allow, and different tolerance types. And so you can really tailor this to place some additional controls on any additional buyout activities that happen as the life of the job occurs. Also, as invoices come in against this PO, and they reference that PO number, if you look close here at my grid, you'll see this to date column. Well, as accounts payable entries occur, what's really nice is it will seamlessly, real-time, update this column here. So accounts payable will always be, in line with this. And I've got an example of that, I believe, right here. So here's an example of where we've received a partial invoice against the PO. And again, as soon as that AP invoice is entered, it updates your to-date column. So as a project manager or a purchaser, I'm always on top of where we're at on our POs. And I can even look at an invoice log of any invoices. And from the job screen itself, see a list of all the open POs on the project. So being able to interact and open things up on the fly, I think that's a real benefit of tying back into the accounting, even from a buyout perspective. One last thing I'll mention or just remind you all of is when we're ready to issue this PO to the vendor, we can leverage the Outlook integration and get that PO out the door very quickly. It converts it to that PDF and attaches it to my Outlook email. As shippers come in from the field, I can scan them and then attach them to this record also, if you would like. So that's kind of POs in a nutshell. And again, that's kind of tying back to those budgets. But I think something that has got a lot of different integration points through the life cycle of a job is a subcontract. And so when we pull up a subcontract in the system, let's pull one up here, there's lots of opportunities for integration tying back to an accounting. And quite frankly, a lot of the clients that we speak to sometimes forget about all of these opportunities because they're so busy running the job. But the reality is, when we issue these subcontracts, you basically create your schedule of values, and then from there, things start happening on the job, right? Change orders and invoices. So we always need to manage the contract both as changes happen and as invoices come in. So it's more of a fluid committed cost. And so when we look at this, again, all these subcontracts are tied back to the job. So by just pulling up that job screen, I can also get a subcontract log, and I can interact with those. We can also go ahead and, I just got a question. Great question. Tracking certificates of insurance. Kind of beat me to the punch on that one. So just real quick here, we can track certificates of insurance. That's done at the vendor level. So I'm going to drill into this vendor. And when I look at the vendor screen, down here you'll see the certificates of insurance. So here we can indicate, when it's been received, when it expires. And we do generate warnings, and those warnings happen on both subcontracts and POs, the entry of accounts payable invoices, and when you go to select invoices to pay. So we've got a couple of opportunities to manage those certificates of insurance. And quite frankly, we actually generate a letter. A lot of clients don't even realize it's here, but right under accounts payable, under payable reports, vendor documents, we can actually, there's a pre-built letter, expired certificates letter. It's right there. And so what you could technically do is say, hey, you know what? I want to just generate letters for everyone who expires at the end of this month or before. So less than or equal, right? I'm going to leave it blank so I can get everyone. But you could basically proactively pull these, and then that quick, I've got 45 vendors who have expired certificates, and I could just generate this letter and put it in with their draw request or whatever. So yes, the answer is we do track and manage those certificates of insurance. Good question. And so as we build out the subcontract, we of course made sure they've got a current certificate with us. We put in their schedule of values, We're going to indicate whether or not they're going to have retainage. And so a couple of things here related to retainage for a sub. When their AP invoice comes into accounting, they're going to, the accounting department will actually allocate that invoice against this subcontract number. And when they do that, it's going to update this invoice column here for us in the project side. But also, if I look at the invoice log for this sub, and I drill down and I see that, you'll notice it automatically pulls out that retainage for us. So we can see as we're communicating with that vendor what the invoice total was and what was in retainage. And also as change orders get approved, it will also update that schedule of values. And we'll be talking about change orders in just a minute. One last thing, in terms of integrating back to the back office, a lot of times, or I shouldn't say a lot of times, we hope it never happens, but on occasion, there might be a sub who's not performing to our delight. So if they're not on this job, I can put a hold pay. And what that does is, I'll show you, back in accounts payable, there's actually an option when we go to select invoices to pay. And you can default to have it on if you want, or you can manually turn it on and off. But right here, we can exclude the invoices that have a hold pay. So we can eliminate some communication there with the accounting department by just leveraging that little field there. Hey, we need to put a hold pay on these guys. And then lastly, all this stuff is happening. I might need a summary of this. I can get one that quick. Just click a mouse button, and I have a complete contract summary here. And we can do things like, because we're interfacing with accounting, now it's easy to get a subcontract audit. When I have a dispute with a sub, I can quickly get a complete recap of what's going on their job, including approved change orders and billings. And for those of you who say, well, that's great, but what if they want to also see their open change orders? There's a little option here I could turn on and say, okay, let me see their open contract and their approved change contract. This particular sub does not have any open changes. So their open contract is the same. But anyways, you can do a compare and contrast. And we can do that because, again, accounting is feeding that data right back here for us. And ultimately, the end result of us doing this buyout, POs and subcontracts, is it's going to give us committed cost reporting. And so just kind of the quick 5-second definition of this is, we start our job and we've got a budget. Then we begin buying it out, and as we do, we increase our committed costs on the job. That's this column. Those are your subcontracts and POs. And then ultimately, they're going to bill us. And as we do, our costs today come up, increase, and we, by doing that, relieve our commitments. And so this becomes a living, breathing report as the job progresses. And so that's just yet another kind of benefit from a reporting standpoint. And a lot of people try and do that manually. I've talked to a lot of the people on the phone here and guests of ours on the meeting today, and they try to accomplish that manually. And when you tie the back office into this, it really improves the accuracy and the speed of that type of reporting. Okay, so we got our job bought out. From there, where really what happens next is scheduling. Now, when I talk to people about scheduling in our system, it's kind of like an added benefit. This is not trying to replace like a P6 schedule. For those of you familiar with Primavera products, I mean, P6 is a very robust piece of scheduling software. However, our scheduling component certainly does manage the fundamentals. And so what we do here is we indicate the schedule activities that are going to take place on the job, and you can do that utilizing a pick list. meaning I can grab the appropriate schedule tasks out of the master list that apply to this job. And when I do that, I've got my schedule activities in place. And when I bring those in, it will default the task types. Now, what the task types are, these are user-defined, for each of you on the phone, and they technically color code your Gantt chart. And so it might help call out something like, here, I need to order some material, and it might be tied to my critical path, so I'm going to highlight that in a particular color. And that's really what those task types are used for. So first I pick the appropriate activities. I indicate the task types, which will color code my Gantt chart. I indicate the duration, which in our system is in days. And I indicate the fixed date. Now the only thing left to do is I need to indicate my predecessors. And for those of you on the phone who aren't familiar with scheduling, a predecessor is the relationship of this specific activity and other ones that are dependent upon it. So, we've got a start-finish, which means in order for me to start this wall framing, I need to complete the demolition. And, start, finish, start, all the various relationships are there. And we indicate those. And this ultimately is what is going to give us a critical path, which is this. So therefore, if I need to change the duration of an activity like wall framing, and I shorten it because we're really good at doing it, it will then impact everything tied to that relationship or that critical path. And for things not tied to the critical path, we can indicate float, right? So like I've got some float here to get those doors and windows ordered because they're not part of the critical path until we get to this part of the job. So that's float. So again, we do hit the fundamentals, and then again, from an integration perspective, right? That's what we're talking about today. We can actually leverage our database of subs that are already in the system, that are used in the accounting piece, to resource load the schedule. Now, why would we do that? Well, of course, I want to see who's going to do it. That's pretty obvious. But also, we might want to send them a notice. And so once we've got our schedules in here and resource loaded, in the scheduling reports area, we have what's called a subcontract notice. And so, again, just leveraging those vendors that are already in the system, I can come in here and say, I've got Samson Electrical. We use them on multiple jobs. I want to make sure they know what's going on. So I'm going to send them a notice. I pick them. And basically what we're saying to them is, okay, Samson, we've got you on these projects doing these activities, and here's your start and finish date when we expect for you to do this. And so I've got that pulled up, and I can just drive that out over to them. So, we are able to go ahead and schedule and manage that job. Like I said, it definitely hits the fundamentals. And for you clients on the phone, this is not a module. That's part of your core package. So, I really encourage you to take a look at it. It might be a really nice tool for you guys to leverage. Okay, so we got the jobs budgeted, bought out, and now scheduled. And now the real fun begins, and that's change orders. Now, change orders was built with ease of use in mind, although there's a lot of stuff going on here if you think about all the different things that a change order impacts. First of all, a change order typically will go both upstream to your client and downstream to your subs, usually. And let me just pull one up here. So here's a sample change order. And so what happens in this is, a lot of people, again, like I mentioned earlier, will track these manually. And one of the main reasons why they do is because they want to track really change requests. And that's the main objective, because there is some potential there for revenue to the company, and they don't want to lose track of them. So they'll track them as change requests with the hope of them becoming change orders. And so when you look at a fully integrated system, one thing you want to really make sure of is that they track change requests. And in this particular system, I go ahead and I indicate the job that it's for. Now the system will auto number the change order, although you could modify that number. And there are definitely reasons why that would be something you would do. And then I just move over here. Now what's interesting is these dates auto-populate based on the status. And that is kind of what I was referring to just a few minutes ago. And we do track change requests. And so a status to us, open, review, and disputed, those three statuses we would consider to be, you know, a change request, or if you use PCO, which is potential change order, regardless of your terminology, that is an open change order. It is not going to update the contract value or the subcontract value or the budget because it's open. Yet we still want to log it and track it, so there's accountability there. So we give you three different buckets to put those change requests in. We also, because we want to leverage reporting upon completion of the job, so we give you the opportunity, if you want, to have user-defined change order types. And these are just examples of things that you might do to organize and track your change orders. And so once we've got that where it needs to be, we need to communicate the change order. And so from one screen, we're going to update the prime, that's your upstream, your client, and your downstream, budget and sub. Starting with the prime, which is your client, I'm going to indicate what we're going to ask for and ask for an amount. And it's pretty straightforward. Now, when we get over to this side, what we can do from here is, oh boy, the questions are flying now. Okay, I'll get to those questions in just a minute. When we get to the budget and sub change part of the system, we indicate what we ultimately are going to want to communicate to the sub, or for internal purposes if we're going to self-perform. So these two things, these tabs, they don't get to see each other's data. So the client will only see this, and the sub will ultimately only see this. Then you'll notice we're going to indicate what we're going to pay to have it done, whether we self-perform it or not. And what's really neat about the integration is when I indicate who's going to do it, the system will automatically tell us who what the subcontract number is for cyanide stucco. So it's going to actually link that for us. And I imagine you would assume it would, but I just would call that out. Now, when that happens, I have a choice. I can say, hey, you know what? This change request is associated with a line item on their subcontract. And so I can actually basically link the change order to one of their schedule of values, or I can choose not to and have it appear or append at the bottom. The other thing that's interesting is we're going to track their change order number. Now, in this example here, I know they both agree, but the reality is a lot of times they're not going to. And so this number is really the change order number for the customer. I'm sorry, for the vendor. I misspoke. So this will be for the vendor, and this will be for the client. And more importantly, we're going to track the status of the sub's change request separately from the client. So this gives you the flexibility to maybe, if you do repeat work for a client, a lot of people do, they may say, hey, just get it done, or at least you'd hope they'd say that. And so it might be approved right away, but you know what, you're going to still, as a good contractor, negotiate with your sub. And so it might not be approved. So these two do not have to agree, which gives you more flexibility. And the change order that comes out of the system looks like this. You know, whether it's upstream or downstream, same looking change order. So one of the questions that was asked is, what if I had a long scope of work? Well, the answer to that is we have what's called the notes field. Now, there's two types of notes. This is called a grid note. And so what that's saying is I've got a long scope of work specific to this line item. So, for example, if I had many line items, which probably most change requests do, and I wanted to include a scope specific to this item, I would use what are called the grid notes. And you can see someone else has asked that question before. But if in the case where we've got like a global scope, something that applies to the whole change order, we use these notes up here. And these notes can, of course, print either one or both on the change order. Good question. Can I see a change order log? Yes, you can. So a change order log, that's right here. The one I used to use, or the one I like, is right here. And a lot of clients, it's kind of hidden. So for the clients on the phone, this is the one that I like. It's report number 51, 64451. This one will actually age your change request. I think that's pretty compelling when you meet with a customer and you can talk to them how old the change request is. And I can filter it. So I'm going to just pick my open ones through 4. It defines it right here. And so I've got 3 outstanding change orders on these jobs. I didn't filter it for a specific job. I left that blank. And as you can see, they're pretty old. Hence, my sample data is very old. But my point is, it will age them for you, and it's got drill down in it. So it's a nice log. I could filter it by specific job if I want. And there's other ones in here too. That's just one that I particularly like. How does it update the contract? Good. That's where I was going next. Okay, so let's go through an example here. So, what do I mean by the status controls, the contract? So we're going to move this back to open. It's going to give me a warning. But this is what I mean by integrating with the accounting. So I'm looking at that change order. It's now open. When I drill into this and look at the contract summary, I drilled into the job, pulled up the summary of the contract for the job. And for those of you on the phone who are doing that manually, you can probably appreciate how fast I'm pulling that up. The reality is, down here you'll see I changed that to open, and so therefore that change request is in this category. It's an open change order. It's not part of the contract amount. When I look at my change order log in the job, it's got a status 2, meaning open. Now, when they give me the approval and I change that to approved, and my sample data is cooperating today, and it is, it then moved it from the open to the updated. And that's what I mean, the beauty of tying back to accounting, because that's probably happening all the time to you guys. And so when we move that from open to approved, my assumption is anyways, you guys want to, you don't want to miss it or miss the opportunity to bill it. Well, it's going to already be part of your updated contract now, and that's going to give you the opportunity when you do your progress bill to, when we did, and for those of you who are doing projects and also responsible for the progress billing, when we bring in this billing, here's a simple one, I now can actually import in all my approved change orders, so I don't have to manually enter them. I can just import them in by using the update feature. And so, everything just seamlessly ties together, ultimately saves you time. And we produce a professional-looking progress bill. Just as a side note, it's your 702 lookalike and 703. Now let's talk a little bit about documents. Try and keep things moving along here, because someone asked a little bit earlier about punch lists, and we do happen to do those, so thank you for that question. But we have an area called document control. And document control does these various things. And I'm going to hit just a few with the time that we have remaining. These really don't impact accounting per se, but it is good that they're there. I'm going to hit the popular ones this morning, starting with RFI. So we wanted just to deliver a basic RFI form that was easy. Anyone could open this up and just use it. And I mean, I believe that that's truly the case here. I open up this screen, I indicate the job, it will auto-number the RFI. Again, I can override that number if it makes sense. I indicate who I'm sending this to, and the return by and date and required and all those things, and what my question is. And again, we can have a professional looking form. Some clients do modify it, and that's okay. You can do that, or have one of our consultants do that. But again, the important thing isn't really the question, it's the answer. And so when the answer comes back from this RFI, leverage the attachments. So I can drag and drop that response into this, whether it's a link to a site or a PDF or whatever is supporting to it. I'll do that. The other things that a lot of people want are, and I'm going to go right to punch list. And again, punch list meant to be very straightforward. Pick the job, indicate the items that need to be managed, and once we do that, we can indicate a location and who's the responsible vendor, track all these various dates, and ultimately produce a walkthrough sheet to take with that customer. So you're going to have the capability to do that. You can generate your letters, your Dunning letters, using the correspondence. It's just a straightforward data entry screen where you can generate your letters. So there's a lot of things here, a lot of tools to help kind of pull you out of a lot of spreadsheets and really into this. And ultimately, the objective is to get that meaningful reporting, like I showed early on. And we've got a ton of reports in here. Following this meeting, if you want a one-on-one, feel free to call Cameron or I, or for you clients on the phone, we do have many trainers on staff. So if you want to get further trained in this area of the product, just call our office and talk to Sherry. Let's open up to some general questions. I got a few here. All right. So, how do we handle back charges? Good question. All right, so back charges. Again, that's a change order. And I think I've got a sample one here. Just bear with me. I'm going to have to scroll through a few. And, oops, here we go. Okay, so how do we handle back charges? Well, obviously, this is one of those situations where I assume you're asking the back charge a sub, not that you were back charged. So since this is a back charge for a sub, I don't really have anything to do on the prime side. Just as a side note, though, if you're referring to yourself, the negative amount would, of course, be here because I need to decrease my contract value. But since we're talking about a sub, the example I've got here is we've got some drywall damage. And, again, I could have a picture of that if I needed to. But anyway, I go over to the budget and sub change right away. And basically what I do first is I say, okay, we've got some damage here. We're going to impact Jansen Drywall to the tune of $200. And if I drill into their contract from here, which I'll do, you'll see on their contract summary that, in fact, we have deducted that from their base contract. But also, we need to fix it. So somewhere along the lines, we need to increase something. Now, in this example here, I said we're going to self-perform it. So that's what I indicated, and I increased that budget line. So painting prep, I decreased because that's what caused the damage. And then how this looks on a report, I think is actually the report I just showed everyone. But we'll see if I'm right. Yeah. So on the report, there's the back charge. Because even though we back charged the sub, it's still going to lower our budget. I'm moving the dollars around. So I decreased that budget from $1749 to $1549, and I've increased it. And since we chose to sell Procurement originally, we had no budget because we had it subbed out, but we're going to have our punch guy do it. And so now that's created a budget line for that. So that's how that impacts the reporting. Again, good question, because that just highlights the benefit of integration. Let's see if we got any other questions here. Oh, okay. Someone just would like to see our work in process. I'll show that to you. Call that a bonding report, and here's what it looks like. Again, we have a ton of different reports, and I encourage you to reach out to us, and we'll help you out with that. But this is what it looks like. I think I showed that at the very beginning of the meeting. And so that looks like the last question. So again, everyone, I'm going to button things up, and I think I've got a slide here with our number. There we go. So again, if anyone has any questions, encourage you guys to call us. For everyone